I was a low-ranked beastman whose spiritual power couldn't even be measured. Because of my stutter, people called me the Little Stammerer. On the day I was admitted to the Imperial First Military Academy, I overheard someone asking Michael, "Hey, are you going to share a dorm with that stammerer?" Michael's face twisted in irritation. His tone was impatient. "What choice do I have? He keeps clinging to me. It's so annoying." Michael was my neighbor back home. We had grown up on the same remote planet. Thinking back, I realized I had indeed troubled him a lot during our journey here. So, when it came time to choose dormitories, I clicked the option for random assignment. That was how I ended up paired with Eric Hanks, a supposedly ordinary background beastman, but a notoriously arrogant and reckless one rumored to be dangerous. When we first met, my nerves made my stutter even worse. Eric, however, only held the juice pouch lazily between his lips, expression blank. He waited in silence until I stumbled through an entire sentence. "From the way you sound, you don't really want to live with him, do you?" Someone pressed. Michael groaned in frustration. "Of course not. His spiritual power is so low, and he can't even speak properly. Living with someone like that is asking for trouble." The boy beside him laughed and patted his shoulder. "Come on, at least he looks good." Michael replied carelessly, "What's the use? Just a vase." My fingers tightened unconsciously around the hem of my clothes. A chill spread in my chest. So that was what he really thought of me. He hated me that much. Yet this same gentle, considerate neighbor had just smiled warmly and greeted me a moment ago. Sensing his gaze shift in my direction, I quickly lowered my head and pretended to know nothing. We weren't standing that close, several dozen meters apart. Normally, no one could hear such distant whispers. But for me, it wasn't difficult. I never understood why, during the spiritual power test, the device hadn't reacted at all. When I stammered out a request to retest, the staff brusquely cut me off and recorded the lowest grade E. Michael walked away, while I stood frozen, staring at the glowing screen of my terminal. My heart had already decided. The Academy's dormitory system was considerate. 2 students could room together regardless of major, or they could choose system allocation. Actually, it had been Michael who first brought it up. On the ship from Tella to the capital star, he'd asked me, "Leo, let's share a room at school. We can look out for each other." Back then, I hadn't realized he was only being polite. I happily agreed. Now I knew it had been nothing more than wishful thinking on my part. "Leo, what are you thinking about?" A new classmate's voice snapped me back. "You haven't chosen your dorm yet. Didn't you say you already had someone in mind?" No, not anymore." I rubbed the wrinkled fabric of my shirt. "I'll accept system assignment. I would never trouble Michael again." The results came quickly. Room number, fingerprint scan, even facial entry were all displayed on my terminal. My roommate's name, Eric Hanks, Combat Division. When I told John, a classmate beside me, he looked stunned. "Eric Hanks," he gasped. "He's a top-tier beastman, triple S in both physical strength and spiritual power. His background may be ordinary, but his reputation at school rivals that of nobles. He's incredible." I nodded nervously. "I see." John hesitated, then added, "But his temper isn't great. Rumor says someone mocked him at the school gate yesterday, and he knocked the guy flat." My chest tightened. Seeing my pale face, John quickly tried to reassure me. "Don't worry. As long as you don't provoke him, he shouldn't give you any trouble." I nodded anxiously. Social interaction had never been my strength thanks to my stutter, and the timid, awkward personality my parents often criticized. Besides, school rules stated you couldn't switch dorms within the first year unless absolutely necessary. I could only pray Eric's temper wasn't as bad as the rumors, and that I wouldn't accidentally anger him. Dragging my feet toward the dorm, my terminal chimed with a message from Michael. "Since you never sent me a roommate request, I already agreed to live with someone else." "Sorry, Leo." The new classmate was so enthusiastic, I couldn't refuse. I stared at the words for a few seconds, then replied simply, "It's fine. Don't worry about it." Following the address, I arrived at the dorm. The other occupant hadn't arrived yet. The school deserved its #1 ranking. Facilities were excellent, far better than anything I'd lived in before. The dorm was a 2-person suite, with 2 identical bedrooms differing only in orientation. I decided to let my roommate choose first. After applying on my terminal, my luggage was quickly delivered from the storage department. I quietly unpacked my meager belongings in the living room. Soon, the AI butler chimed softly. Eric had arrived. Almost at the exact moment the door opened, I shot upright, turning stiffly toward him. My nerves made my posture rigid, my movements clumsy like I was being punished to stand still. The young man who entered was tall and lean, dressed in trendy clothes. His striking face outshone even the many handsome beastmen I'd seen these past few days. On Capital Star, He was handsome in a way that was uniquely his own. His expression didn't change when he saw me. A juice pouch still hung lazily from his lips, a trace of languor between his brows. He gave me a casual nod. Hello. My stutter tripped worse than ever. I'm your roommate. My name is Leo Adams. I deliberately spoke slowly to make sure he caught every word. To simple sentences stretched into more than 10 seconds. Eric didn't interrupt. He didn't even look impatient. He simply removed the juice from his mouth, waited until I fell silent, then asked, "Finish introducing yourself." Sweat dampened my palms. I nodded hard. "My name's Eric Hanks," he said. "Combat Division. Black Wolf Beastman." His nose twitched slightly as he looked at me. His tone lifted at the end, uncertain but teasing. Little cat, that he guessed my beast form so easily startled me. But considering his triple S spiritual power, it wasn't unreasonable. So I nodded again. "Yes." He glanced around the room and stepped further inside. "Haven't chosen a bedroom yet." "Not yet." "Why not?" His lazy, low voice drifted over, before abruptly switching topics. "How old are you?" I blinked at the sudden question, but answered honestly, 19. "Then I'm a year older." He shrugged. "You pick first. I don't care about rooms." He really did seem indifferent. "Oh, okay. Thank you." Honestly, it made little difference to me. Both rooms were the same. Silently, I chanted a childish rhyme in my head and picked one of the bedrooms at random. Dragging my suitcase inside, I turned back and gave Eric a little gesture. "All right," he said with a faint smile. "Go on, settle in." I nodded. Before closing the door, I poked half my face back out and whispered toward the man in the living room. By our first meeting had been unexpectedly smooth. He wasn't nearly as frightening as I had imagined. His temper actually seemed pretty good. The knot of tension in my chest loosened by more than half. Classes would officially begin next week. This week was reserved for orientation, paperwork, and familiarizing ourselves with the campus. For the first 2 days, Eric was rarely in the dorm. He seemed busy with something else. On the third day, just as I was about to go out, I happened to run into him returning. "Heading out?" he asked casually. "Yes," I nodded slightly. To eat? With someone?" I froze. "No." "Then count me in," he added with a teasing drawl. "Little cat." And so, the two of us went out to eat together. For the past 2 days, I'd been eating in the academy cafeteria. When Eric found out, he simply said we could go there. The academy grounds were huge, with several different cafeterias. We chose the nearest one. As soon as we entered, Eric asked, "What's good here, little cat?" He called me that again. The nickname was embarrassing and strange. I suspected he'd forgotten my name, so I reminded him. "My name is Leo Adams." "I know," Eric said with a nod. "Little cat." I opened my mouth. "Then why? Why don't you just call me by my name?" Eric stroked his chin thoughtfully. "You could call me Wolf." Was this some odd habit of his, calling people by their beast forms? While I was lost in thought, I saw him curve his lips into a smile. He was already handsome, but when he smiled like that, it was dangerously captivating. "All right," he said. "I'll call you by your name from now on." I pressed my lips together, nodded softly. "Okay." I collected my food first, then went to the seat I had picked out in advance to wait for him. A voice called from behind me, unexpectedly familiar. "Leo." I turned and saw Michael approaching with his usual gentle smile. "Been busy these past 2 days? I haven't heard from you." I didn't know how to face him. He clearly despised me, yet always acted so kind in person. While I hesitated, Michael sat down right across from me, right in Eric's seat. I blinked and reminded him. "The seat is taken." Michael frowned, puzzled. "What?" At that moment, Eric arrived behind him, voice slow and lazy. "Who are you?" "Taking my seat." Michael turned, his expression faltering when he saw Eric. But he quickly composed himself and said lightly, "Leo and I haven't talked in a few days. I just wanted to catch up." "I see Leo every day," Eric replied flatly. "We're just eating. Don't you understand? First come, first served." Michael's face darkened. The tension between them made my stomach twist. I hurried to Eric's side, tugging gently at his sleeve. Let's eat over there instead." Eric gave Michael a fleeting glance. "Fine." Michael said nothing, but I could feel the weight of his gaze on my back long after we walked away. During the meal, I was distracted. Eric asked what kind of relationship I had with Michael. Speaking slowly and haltingly, I thought about typing it out on my terminal. But before I could finish writing, Eric pressed down on my hand. "Face to face," he said, eyes gesturing pointedly. "Why use that thing?" So, stumbling over the words, I told him Michael and I were from the same planet, and neighbors besides. "So, you two were close?" Eric asked. I lowered my head. That was before. And now, he hates me. My voice dropped to a whisper. I don't want to be around him anymore. When I said be around, I thought I heard Eric chuckle under his breath. But when I looked up, his face was perfectly calm. Maybe I'd imagined it. How do you know he hates you? He pressed. So I told him about that day. The things I'd overheard. When I finished, Eric's verdict was blunt. A fraud. If he comes bothering you again, tell him to get lost. Say you're with me. The phrasing was strange, but it sounded like he was protecting me. I nodded seriously. All right. After spending a few days together, I was certain Eric was genuinely a good person. Surprisingly considerate. The bad temper I had worried about seemed not to exist at all. We weren't in the same program. I studied pharmaceutics while he was in combat, but our classrooms were in the same building. So, whenever both of us had class, he would walk with me. Soon, he became the first person I felt comfortable with at school. One day in class, John leaned over and whispered, "Leo, how's it going with your roommate?" "Good. Really, really good," I answered softly, and even defended him. "He's very, very kind." John exhaled in relief. "That's not what I heard. But as long as you're fine, that's what matters." The lecture moved on. The instructor spoke about the dangers of spiritual power instability, especially in predatory species like wolves or lions. Overuse of beast forms can overload the nervous system. That's why pharmaceutics is vital. The medicines you will learn to make here may save countless lives. At the Imperial First Military Academy, you'll receive the most comprehensive, authoritative training. I hope each of you will become an outstanding pharmacist. The first year was tightly scheduled, but not too difficult. I could follow the classes. That day, Eric and I had agreed to go back to the dorm together after class. But he sent me a message, saying his session wasn't over yet and asking me to wait so we could have dinner afterward. I thought for a moment, then decided to go find him. His final class was a combat practical. The training grounds weren't far. When I arrived, the session had just ended. The air inside was thick with sweat and raw testosterone. Some students were still in beast form, birds soaring overhead, felines darting at full speed, practicing hunts. The grounds were vast, so I stayed by the entrance, sending Eric a message to say I was there. Just then, a mocking voice came from behind me. Well, if it isn't the little stammer. I turned to see one of Michael's friends grinning at me. Here to chase after Michael again. I thought you'd given up already. Guess not. I stepped back to paces. No, that's not it. But he didn't listen, caught up in his own story. You really are persistent. But take my advice, drop the idea early. Michael's a dual beastman, in strength and spirit. You don't stand a chance. His words were absurd. Talking to someone like this was exhausting. The more I ignored him, the more he talked. So I turned away, silent. But he didn't let up. What? No comeback. Stammerer. His grin widened. How about this? Call me Big Brother nice and smooth, and I'll go fetch Michael for you. I stepped farther away, craning my neck toward the training field, hoping to spot Eric. Oh. Giving me the cold shoulder? His voice grew sharp with irritation. You think you can ignore me? He grabbed my arm and yanked me around. Don't touch me. I shook him off. What's wrong with touching you? Classmate. The sharp, commanding voice cut him off. At the same time, a strong hand clamped down on his shoulder. It was Eric. His grip was frighteningly strong, making the other boy grimace as he twisted around to break free. Before he could say anything, Eric asked calmly, "There's a move the teacher just demonstrated that I didn't quite get. Want to practice it with me?" The boy froze. What? Eric didn't bother repeating himself. He moved in a blur so fast I almost couldn't follow. A loud thud echoed across the training ground. The boy was slammed to the ground, groaning. Eric rotated his wrist, voice cool and detached. Turns out I do understand it after all. Then he turned to me as if nothing had happened. Sorry for the wait. Let's go eat. I glanced at the boy lying motionless on the ground, hesitant. But, it's fine. Eric slid an arm over my shoulders and steered me away. If he wants to lie there, let him. Poor guy probably hasn't even awakened his brain yet. We'll give him some space. I wanted to say he looked almost dead. But since Eric said it was fine, I let it go and followed him out. The academy offered public courses where all departments mixed together. Physiology was one of them. By luck, Eric and I were placed in the same class. It was one of only 2 courses we shared, the other being spiritual power fundamentals. Eric had stayed up late the night before and skipped breakfast. During the lecture, he slouched at my side, whispering nonstop, "I'm starving. Gonna faint right here. I bet I'll be the first wolf in history to starve to death." I had brought along some egg tarts I baked myself. Eric had seen them. When I packed them in the morning, half the batch had ended up in his stomach already. I suspected he was angling for more. Eating in class wasn't appropriate, so I'd planned to give him one later. But his whining wore me down. Pressing my lips together, I finally slipped the egg tarts from my bag and nudged them onto his desk. Here, eat them after class. Eric's grin lit up with triumph. Okay. But the moment the teacher was absorbed in lecturing and no one was paying close attention, he tore open the package and bit half of one in a single gulp. I widened my eyes at him in silent protest. Eric lowered his gaze, feigning innocence. The smell tricked me. Thought class was over. I sighed, looking away. He tucked away the remaining half, leaned closer, and murmured, "All right, I'll save the rest for later." I said nothing. "Roommate," he whispered, "are you mad at me?" I wanted to warn him the teacher had been glancing in our direction for a while now. But before I could, a sharp voice boomed from the podium. "Eric, answer this question." Cut off guard, Eric rose smoothly to his feet. Quickly and accurately state 3 biological traits of any classmate's beast form. His eyes flicked briefly toward me. Without hesitation, he spoke. Heightened sense of smell and hearing. Excellent night vision. Pupils that contract and expand with light or emotion. Flexible joints, high agility, strong climbing ability. His answer flowed without a pause. The teacher gave a curt nod. "Sit down," he added sternly, "and pay attention during class. No whispering, no flirting. Don't think this subject is unimportant. If you don't understand the characteristics of different species, what will you do on the battlefield or in a relationship?" Heat surged into my cheeks as I felt the eyes of half the class burning into us. I wanted to sink straight into the floor. When the bell finally rang, I thought I'd suffocate from mortification. Eric, however, looked perfectly unbothered, expression as cool as ever. I stuffed my things into my bag quickly, head down. Eric poked my arm. "Roommate." I glared at him, lips pressed tight. "Leo," he teased. "Really mad at me?" I steadied myself, ready to retort about his endless strange nicknames, when a voice cut in from behind. "Can't you see Leo doesn't want to talk to you? Leave him alone." I turned and saw Michael. He was addressing Eric. For a second I froze. Then Michael's gaze shifted to me. "I heard from Tom that you came looking for me at the training grounds the other day. Was something wrong?" His tone faltered. He glanced at Eric, then added meaningfully, "Perhaps this isn't the place. Why don't we talk in private?" I drew in a breath and answered clearly, No, I didn't avoid you and I didn't look for you either." "That's not true." Beside me, Eric suddenly burst into a low laugh, his tone lazily mocking. "Oh, I see. Mr. Self-Important." His smirk deepened. "What's with that face, all purple like pig liver? Constipated?" Michael's fist clenched. His expression darkened further. Before Eric could say something even harsher, I quickly grabbed his arm, whispering urgently, Let's go." Eric's gaze softened, the cold edge in his eyes easing. "All right." Relief washed through me. My hand slipped from his arm only for his fingers to catch mine, hooking around my index first, then curling gently until he clasped my whole hand in his. The warmth of his palm wrapped around mine. Startled, I looked up at him. His expression was calm, straightforward. "This way's easier. We won't get separated." But there weren't that many people around. Growing more familiar with Eric, I'd begun to relax at the dorm. I could lounge on the couch, play silly games, or mess around in the kitchen making desserts my secret little hobby. In this era, the mainstream diet was nutrient solutions. They came in endless flavors, providing all necessary sustenance and easy to consume. But eating them day after day grew monotonous and bland. So occasionally, making sweets was a small joy. Whenever I saw new recipes online, I'd buy the ingredients and try them out. Eric always insisted on tasting my experiments. One time, I realized I'd used the wrong ingredient in a batch of cupcakes. Just as I was about to warn him, he stuffed one straight into his mouth. I panicked, rushing to grab his hand. Words tumbled out in a frantic stutter. "Don't stop, spit it out quick." The strange taste made his brows crease, his expression twisting. "Spit it out," I urged, nearly prying at his mouth. But Eric only swallowed. Composing his features, he declared solemnly, "Is this a new flavor? Not bad. Very unique. Innovative, Leo." I almost laughed and cried at once. That was a failure. Quickly I scooped up the rest of the ruined batch before he could snatch another. He kept staring longingly at the failed batch, so I quickly said, "I'll make another later. You can eat that instead." "All right then." Eric watched me pack the little cakes away, then asked, "Where are you taking those? Don't tell me you're giving them to someone else. We barely have enough for ourselves." I blinked at him, puzzled. "No, not giving them away. They're not Edible. Good. Eric nodded, then muttered, I was afraid you'd get soft and feed them to that shameless snake. My expression went blank. Who? When I didn't follow, he searched for words to remind me. You know the crazy neighbor. That fraud with a hole in his brain. The one who never understands human speech. Realization dawned on me. Michael. Eric had used similar words for him before. And Michael was a snake beastman. But Eric didn't answer. Instead, his expression darkened, his brows knitting together. Just as I wondered if I'd guessed wrong, he spoke softly, voice laced with grievance. Why is it that you can say his name so fluently? There was an edge of wounded jealousy he couldn't quite hide. You've never once called my name that smoothly. His eyes lowered, voice heavy with dejection, almost childlike in its pout. That's because seeing him so genuinely downcast, I rushed to explain, just out of habit. I didn't dare voice the reason aloud. My instincts told me it would only upset him further. Eric's reply was quiet, but pointed. You can get used to my name, too. My lips parted, but no words came. Then he said firmly, from now on, you'll call me by my name clearly, smoothly. I froze. But I'm not in a hurry. You can take your time practicing. His tone shifted again, soft and aggrieved. Or is it that you just don't want to? I curled my fingers, shaking my head quickly. No, not that. His expression blossomed into a smile. Then it settled. And settled it was. Eric really did supervise my practice every day. On the way to class, on the way back to the dorm, at meals, during idle evenings at random. Unexpected moments, he'd suddenly say, time to practice. Under his persistent watch, I had no choice but to obey. At first, it was hopelessly disjointed, 3 simple syllables, broken with pauses and repeats. But Eric never lost patience. He listened carefully every time, correcting gently. Eric, don't rush. Stretch out the first syllable, slow your pace. I blinked at his unusually serious expression, then tried again. Eric, there. Perfect. Let's keep going. Once, when I was too tired and tried to slack off, I deliberately called his name in one swift, fluent breath. Eric. He froze, uncharacteristically caught off guard. The tips of his ears seemed to flush faint red. When he didn't respond, I took it as today's quota achieved and tried to slip away to my room. But Eric caught my arm, arresting me mid-step. With both hands, he mischievously squished my cheeks together. Little cat, he drawled, cheating, are we? No running. I blinked up at him and dragged out a whiny syllable. Sleepy. After a pause, Eric released me with a soft laugh. All right. Good night, good night. Under his relentless coaching, I eventually managed to say Eric as fluently as anyone else. My speech flowed evenly, no longer halting or broken. But Eric wasn't satisfied. Once I mastered his name, he started making me practice longer sentences, training my pronunciation habits, having me read aloud slowly, tapping rhythms for me, repeating exercises by my side. Eric. His eyes lifted lazily from the picture book in his hands. Thank you. That formal? He arched a brow. If you really want to thank me, why don't we go out together this weekend? Not a date, just a little trip. The weekend was approaching, and I hadn't gone out to relax in a long time. After a moment, I nodded. Okay. Michael, however, had been messaging me often. His words were pointless, confusing. I mostly ignored them. But I knew I needed to clarify things eventually. One day after class, while waiting for someone, I ran into him. I thought about pretending not to see him, slipping past unnoticed. But he walked straight over, his tone lacking its usual warmth, tinged instead with impatience. Leo, are you still sulking? Is this about not rooming with me? I already explained. If you keep being unreasonable, don't blame me for ignoring you from now on. I looked up at him without speaking. Michael pressed on. Who could put up with this? You've already got a flaw, you stutter, and now you're stubborn on top of it. You. He seemed to realize his words had crossed a line and cut himself off. I said quietly, so, you've always despised me. If you hate me, then let's never talk again. I don't want to speak to you either. Surprise flickered in his eyes. What do you mean? I drew a steadying breath. That day, when we were choosing dorms, I heard what you said to your friends. I'm not desperate. I won't cling to you. This time, Michael was genuinely shocked, but disbelief lingered. Who told you that? He couldn't fathom that I'd overheard from such a distance. I only shook my head, unwilling to argue further, and moved to walk past him. He grabbed my wrist. His voice dropped heavy. If you won't talk to me, who else will you talk to? Leo Adams, do you really think someone like you could make friends here? Do you even know where you are? Stop being naive. People like you, from the outer systems, with no talent and a flaw on top of it, who would ever want to befriend you? My eyes widened. even though I had overheard him slandering me behind my back before. The image of his usual gentle demeanor was still etched in my mind. But now hearing him say such words to my face, I finally understood what Eric meant. When he said Michael pretended, "You think just because you're a useless burden, everyone else must be the same." I froze. Then a hand yanked me back, away from Michael. Eric's cold voice rang beside my ear. "Stay away from him, Leo. Be careful, this lunatic might bite." Relief washed through me the moment I realized it was Eric. I obediently stood at his side. Michael's gaze darted between us, and he sneered. "So that's why you're so bold. You found yourself a protector." "Leo Adams," he scoffed. "You really think a troublemaking commoner like him is worth relying on? Triple S means nothing without background. He'll never amount to anything." Eric's tone was glacial. "Maybe so, but it's enough to beat the shit out of you." Michael's face twisted, pupils narrowing into sharp vertical slits that gleamed with menace. Eric's eyes locked on his, pupils dilating into a single obsidian black point, bottomless and cold. The tension between them crackled, almost tangible. Fighting was forbidden on school grounds. Panicked, I grabbed Eric's hand, tugging hard to pull him away. "Eric," I whispered urgently. I used all my strength, but he didn't budge an inch. He stood there like a statue, unmoving. In the end, it was Michael who first broke the stare. He turned his cold eyes on me instead, his voice slithering like a snake's tongue. "So, you're with him now, Leo Adams? You'll regret it." He misunderstood, likely because of that nickname. The first time Eric made me call him that, he hadn't been pleased. I'd only said it because I was lazy. But later, he insisted, and after a few tries it came naturally. I had no intention of answering Michael. Thankfully, Eric finally moved, letting me drag him away. We walked a long distance before I dared exhale in relief. It was then I realized at some point, Eric had taken my hand. I shook it lightly, but he wouldn't let go. So I just let him hold it. After a while, his deep voice came, low against the night air. "We're together now." I blinked in confusion. Since when? How could I, the person involved, not know? Just now. That crazy dog said it. Eric spoke with complete conviction. "You didn't deny it, so you agreed." I faltered, managing only, "He's a snake." "Fine. That crazy snake then." I only didn't argue because I didn't want to talk to him, I explained. I just wanted to leave. Eric said nothing. We walked in silence. Then, after a long pause, his voice dropped again. "But I want to be with you." I stopped dead, lifting my head in shock. He looked down at me, my dazed reflection caught in his dark eyes. "I like you," he repeated. "I want to be with you." "Leo," he bent slightly, leveling his gaze with mine. "If you feel even the smallest spark for me, say yes. Let's try." My heart pounded, hot and restless, beating at an unnatural pace. I thought back on all the moments we'd shared. It wasn't just a spark. It was far more. My lashes fluttered, and I heard myself answer softly, "Okay." After I began dating Eric, life didn't seem much different. We were still stuck to each other most of the time. One day, he had training outside the academy. I went back to the dorm alone. After binging 3 episodes of The Domineering Lion, His Runaway Rabbit, Eric still hadn't returned. I shifted into my beast form and ran laps around the room, bounding freely until I finally wore myself out. Then I leapt onto the sofa, grooming my fur meticulously from head to tail before curling into a ball with contentment. Just a short nap, I told myself. But the warmth of the room and the familiar, comforting scent lulled me deeper. I overslept. It wasn't until I heard the door unlock that my ears twitched awake. Groggily, I lifted my head and peered at the entrance. Eric had come back. He stood frozen at the doorway, staring at me as though spellbound. Slowly, heat burned in his eyes, growing hotter and more intense. I stretched languidly and yawned. "You're back." Eric stepped forward. His silhouette stretched and blurred, human lines dissolving until a massive black wolf emerged, sleek fur shimmering like woven night, eyes blazing with innate dominance. Then he surged forward in a sprint, barreling toward me. I froze, stunned by the sheer size of him. The next moment, the world spun as I was engulfed in warmth and scent, buried in soft, thick fur. The giant wolf, so much larger than me, encircled my whole body in his embrace. His burning chest pressed firmly against my back, and I could feel his powerful heartbeat thundering against me so strong that the tips of my ears tingled. Eric's low growl rumbled at my ear. "Little cat. So cute. Baby. You're so soft. And you smell so good." Though we couldn't speak human words in beast form, our beast speech was perfectly clear to one another. Eric sheathed his sharp claws, cupping me carefully with his massive paws, pads soft as velvet as they stroked my back as if I were fragile glass. His damp nose nudged along my nape and ears, hot breath making me shiver and shrink away. I let out helpless cries. Eric, stop rubbing against me, it feels weird. But my throat betrayed me, rumbling in a purr of pleasure. His wolf eyes sparkled with laughter. Flustered, I shut my eyes and played dead, but I couldn't escape his relentless nuzzles. At last, overwhelmed, I shifted back into human form only for Eric to topple me easily, holding me down, his head still butting insistently against me. For such a fearsome, majestic beast, his antics were absurdly childish. Eric, I pushed at his wolf head. Get up? He finally relented, slowly morphing back into his human shape. But he didn't let me go. Instead, his arm swept me back against his chest, his voice dropping husky. You're beautiful. I was a rare long-haired calico nine-tailed tomcat. Eric had seen my beast form before, but back then we were only roommates. He had never been so unrestrained. Dazed, I lay in his hold, his breath burning hotter against my neck. Then a light kiss landed on my cheek. I couldn't tell who leaned in first. Our lips met and Eric pressed down hard, wolfish aggression laid bare. His tongue pried open my mouth, taking everything without restraint. I tilted my head back beneath the searing kiss, quickly overwhelmed. When he finally released me, I slumped against his chest, breath ragged. You kissed too long. I complained weakly. Sorry, Eric said, the smirk at his lips betraying his lack of remorse. I'll try to shorten it next time. But of course, he never did. Every kiss lasted just as long. Lately, there had been more joint classes between combat and pharmaceutics. For instance, in a physical training class, students from Combat Class A and Class B were paired with us for demonstrations. Eric, being from Class A, should have been randomly assigned. But with a bit of scheming, he ended up partnered with me. After the teacher explained the basics, the combat students were free to teach their partners. Honestly, I'd wanted to slack off. Those sessions always left me exhausted. But with Eric here, maybe I could use my boyfriend as an excuse to be lazy. I glanced at him, blinking slyly. He didn't respond. Strange. Why so slow today? Biting my lip, I stepped closer and scratched at his palm with my fingertips. This time, he didn't even bother pretending. His eyes glimmered with amusement. Don't understand. So annoying. Did he really want me to say it out loud? Pouting, I leaned closer and whispered so softly only he could hear. Eric, I want to slack off. Is that okay? His smile widened, a playful curve tugging at his lips. One kiss. I shook my head frantically. There are so many people here. Then one kiss here, or lots of kisses later at home. You choose. Later, I muttered. Perfect, Eric grinned wickedly. Because I also wanted lots of kisses later. And so, I shamelessly slacked off during class. The training field buzzed with beast forms, birds swooping, felines prowling. For a fleeting moment, I felt a cold, sticky gaze pierce my back. I turned my head and met the slit-pupiled stare of a yellow python. Michael. I looked away immediately, ignoring him, and shifted into my beast form beside Eric. On the training field, I darted and paused, pretending to practice seriously. In truth, chasing and playing would have been a more accurate description. The black wolf pounced on me in a flash, retracting his claws so that only soft pads pressed against my head as he rubbed it. I let myself flop onto the ground, rolling onto my back with ease. Then the wolf leaned close and began grooming me, his damp, barbed tongue running again and again along my spine. His restraint was precise, his pressure just right. My once fluffy fur lay sleek and smooth beneath his care. I melted under his service, a faint purr slipping unbidden from my throat. Then footsteps approached. The wolf's ears pricked instantly. He sprang upright, bristling with alertness, until he saw who it was. A sharp crack landed against his head. Just enough force to daze him, not enough to hurt. Teaching, huh? And instead you're busy licking? The booming voice of our physical training instructor roared across the field. Whose class are you from? Who dares fool around on my lesson? 5 minutes later, in full view of several classes, Eric and I, now both in human form, were dragged aside and scolded. Head lowered, shame flushed so deep I wanted to crawl into the earth. Eric, by contrast, was calm, serious as he explained. Teacher, I wasn't fooling around. That's my partner. The teacher's brows shot up. Oh, so you have the nerve to justify it. In broad daylight, in front of everyone, you behave so shamelessly. Do you think your classmates exist just to watch your little romance? You think you're the only one with a partner. That yours is the only one who looks good. I shrank into the background, silent, letting Eric shoulder all the fire. As courses grew more advanced, we finally began hands-on work brewing potions. There were many kinds, but what we attempted first was a fast-acting sedative. Administered during an orc's bout of frenzy, it soothed and stabilized them. The difficulty level was relatively low, which made it the most mass-produced and widely used potion on the market. I released my spiritual power, carefully extracting components from several herbs. Following the teacher's steps, I merged them one by one, tools precise in my hands. Because it was my first time, I was cautious, so cautious that sweat purled at the tip of my nose. First attempt successful, and in good time too. Excellent, the teacher's approving voice came from beside me. The quality looks high as well. Turning, I smiled awkwardly. Thank you, teacher. You're Leo Adams, right? Spirit level E? He frowned. That can't be. Your control over spiritual force is far too skilled. Yet during the official test, the machine had shown nothing. I pressed my lips together, not knowing what to say. The teacher patted my shoulder. Keep working hard, you have real talent. In the end, the potion tested at grade A, high quality. That night, back at the dorm, I shared the news with Eric. His praise came without pause. Master, genius, god, future top-tier alchemist, star of the empire. Laughing, I lunged to cover his mouth, but he caught me, flipped me beneath him, and trailed kisses downward from my forehead, to the bridge of my nose, to my lips, then along my jaw and down my neck. It tickled so much I wriggled under him, laughter spilling out. But the heat growing between us soon burned higher, like a spark flaring into wildfire. Eric's lips found mine again. Dizzy, I kissed him back until I suddenly felt the hard press of something against my thigh. My eyes flew wide, panic jolting through me. I clutched his arm. Wait, don't be afraid, he soothed, his thumb brushing my cheek. I won't do anything. And just as I relaxed, he added hoarsely, just a little rubbing. His hand slid restlessly at my waist. His head tucked against my shoulder so vividly it conjured the image of his furry wolf head, nuzzling me. Please. His husky voice trembled with restraint. Seeing him struggle, my resolve wavered. I closed my eyes and nodded. That night, things turned messy, chaotic, unrestrained. From then on, Eric was bolder than ever. At night, he either crawled into my bed or dragged me into his. One room in our dorm was always empty. I had never shared a bed with anyone since childhood. I thought I'd hate it, but I slept better than ever. His scent was too familiar, too safe. Sometimes he'd shift into a wolf, and I'd either curl up against his warm body or turn into a cat myself, tucking against his belly. Either way, it was bliss. Because of potion making, my schedule grew heavier. I stayed in the lab late, returning later and later. One evening, back at the dorm, I immediately sensed something wrong. A shadow streaked toward me fast, dark as ink. Before I could react, it shifted into human form and wrapped me in a crushing embrace. The force was so great it felt like he wanted to fuse me into his very body. He'd seared my neck, his breath ragged and hot against my skin. Eric, I froze. What's wrong? His body burned feverishly, and the hard length pressed against me was impossible to ignore. His throat rumbled with guttural growls, his head restless as it rubbed against my nape. That one slazy voice slurred with need. Little cat, baby. I realized quickly. Eric's rut had arrived. There were suppressants, but with heavy side effects. And he was my boyfriend. We had done almost everything short of the final step. Thoughts raced and settled into resolve. I patted his back. Let's go. To the bedroom. Eric swept me into his arms. The moment I touched the bed, his lips devoured mine more fevered than ever before. The room filled with muffled breaths, the rasp of clothes, the heat of skin on skin. I bit my lip, stifling sounds that threatened to escape. Fingertips skimming his top back as waves of sensation rolled over me. Time blurred. When it was over, I was limp, unable to so much as lift a finger. Our raging blood finally calmed, leaving only tangled breaths and the warmth of our entwined bodies in the dark. We took leave for several days. Eric's rut lasted 5 full days. During that time, he was different. Fewer words, just relentless focus. Even in human form, his throat would rumble with unconscious wolf howls, and he loved to nip at my face. Those days, I fully understood the extent of his stamina. Each time, I collapsed into exhausted sleep, only to wake with him still brimming with energy. When it finally ended, Eric was glowing, more spirited than ever, and even clingier. At the slightest excuse, he pounced, smothering me in hugs and kisses. In wolf form, he obsessed over grooming me, licking until he accidentally bit. Meanwhile, thanks to his persistence, my stutter improved greatly. As long as I slowed my pace, I could manage sentences under 10 words without pausing or repeating. I'd thought life at the Imperial Academy would take a long time to adjust to, but everything was turning brighter than I had imagined. I was lucky. Before I knew it, finals arrived. The exam format, free team-ups. Enter the Manlinino forest to hunt a set number of mutant beasts and gather herbs. Scores would be based on overall performance. Students from all departments could team as they liked, 2 or more members per group. Different from past tests, but not drastically so. As soon as the exam notice was released, Eric immediately shouted that we would form a team of 2. On the day when students submitted team information at the square, the place was bustling with activity. Many people were forming last-minute groups. I kept my head down, scrolling through my light brain to check past exam records, hoping to pick up useful experience. Eric, relaxed as always, leaned in and said, "Baby, with you here, there's no way we won't get a perfect score." I chuckled. "That's way too exaggerated." He bent down to my level. "Then let me look with you." Just then, a voice called from behind me. "Leo." It had been so long since I heard that voice. I thought I was imagining it. But when I turned around, it was really Michael. After our last unpleasant encounter, he had messaged me, but I blocked him. We hadn't spoken since. "Our team is still short a member," he said. "Come join us." Thomas and Jaden are in it too. With us, scoring above 90 each is no problem. Thomas and Jaden were both from combat class the same as Eric. Not only were they strong, they were also nobles of the capital star. For Michael, a Class B student, to team with them, he must have gone to some lengths. "No need." I shook my head. "I already have a team." Eric butted in, smirking. "What's wrong, slippery snake? We're aiming for full marks too. Don't think you can drag Leo down." Michael's face darkened. "Eric, don't you see? Clinging to Leo like this will only hurt him. You have nothing. What happiness can you give him?" Eric sneered. "You just spit out whatever your dreams feed you." Michael's eyes sharpened, about to retort until he spotted someone. He stopped mid-sentence. I followed his gaze and saw who it was. Lewis Williams, the Empire's second prince and president of the student council. No wonder Michael froze like a stone. Lewis walked straight toward us, his expression unreadable, his eyes sweeping the crowd before coming to rest on Eric. My stomach tightened. Had Eric broken some rule? But then Eric casually lifted his chin at him and said, "Hi." Lewis's brows furrowed. "Don't you know how to greet properly?" There was a pause before Eric, clearly unwilling, muttered, "Brother, HM." The square fell silent. Shock rippled through the students. Even I was stunned. Eric called Lewis brother? That would make him the third prince? He'd never told me, though. Now I remembered he had once mentioned having older brothers. While I was still piecing things together, Lewis spoke again. "Come home for dinner tomorrow night. Mother says she hasn't seen you in days." "Got it," Eric replied, then tugged me closer, lacing his fingers through mine. "By the way, this is my boyfriend, the one I told you about, Leo. This is my second brother." I drew in a sharp breath. "Hello, I'm Leo Adams." Lewis's smile was warm. "Hello, I'm Lewis Williams. Thank you for putting up with my brother. He can be reckless." Flustered, I waved my hands. "No, Eric is wonderful. He takes good care of me." Lewis's smile deepened, but the crowd's attention only grew sharper. Whispers buzzed through the square. Michael stayed silent the whole time, his face pale as ash. "All right, brother. You should leave now," Eric said, shooing him. "I'm such a shy, socially anxious introvert. Don't embarrass me." I truly could not understand how those words could ever apply to Eric. Lewis raised a brow. "So introverted you don't even recognize your own brother?" "I didn't say that," Eric replied smoothly. "I just want to live as a low-key handsome man." Lewis left. Eric, still holding my hand, was about to pull me away when Michael's voice came. Hoarse and desperate. "Your Highness, third prince. I think there's been some misunderstanding between us." The way he changed faces was astonishing. Eric ignored him completely, leading me away without hesitation. After we had walked a fair distance, Eric wrinkled his nose. "Was that just a rotten fly buzzing? Disgusting. Let's go faster." I couldn't help but laugh. The final exam went smoothly. Eric handled the beast. I gathered herbs. My spiritual power could probe wide and precise, and if we stumbled upon mutant beast, Eric was more than strong enough to deal with them. By the end, we had collected a great deal of spoils. Our overall score was excellent. Soon after, at our teacher's suggestion, I underwent a professional reevaluation at the Imperial Research Institute. The result, an extremely rare 3S variant of spiritual power. No wonder my teacher had said I had extraordinary talent in potion making. With such strong spiritual force, the work came far easier. Vacation arrived quickly. At first, I thought of returning to Telestar, but my parents were always away. I would only be alone there. I dropped the idea. Conveniently, Eric said he wanted to travel together. That night, nestled in bed, we pored over destinations until late, finally settling on one. The beautiful images we'd seen on the light brain stirred quiet anticipation in me. Rolling over into his arms, I let him hold me tight. Eric lowered his head to kiss the corner of my lips, his hand slipping with mischief beneath my pajama hem. I shifted uneasily, murmuring, "It's late. It's vacation." His voice rasped, "No class tomorrow." We tangled long into the night. By the time Eric carried me half asleep into the shower, I could barely keep my eyes open. Clean and drowsy, I shifted into my beast form, curling small and warm in his arms. On the wide bed, Eric changed into his black wolf form, pulling me against him with one great paw. The room fell into silence. Only the steady, harmonious sound of our breaths remained to figures, one large and one small, at peace in the quiet night.